Bob Savar. You were a high school and college teacher, and you were also the founder and CEO of two successful businesses. And today we're here to talk about your book, Breakable Habits. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Elaine.
So yes, I've been going through your book, and before going into the topic of the book, I would like to know a little bit about you. What kind of business were you? What kind of classes were you teaching in college? Just general information about your background.
Okay, so I'll try to be brief. Yeah, I taught expository writing when I was in Binghamton, New York at Harper College for 3 years. I taught advanced placement English in high school for 3 years while I was working on my dissertation. And I was also a high school tennis coach. The first business I started was a health food manufacturing company. I was into health foods at the time. And my first products were mostly pizzas, organic whole wheat pizzas. We had them distributed throughout the country in all the Whole Foods, et cetera. And that was a very successful company. I sold it after 22 years. And then of all things, I started a technology company in 1989. I called it World Wide Web Communications, which was a neat name at the time because the internet was so new. And we started out building websites, building and hosting websites, went into custom software, did a lot of work for banks. We created intranets for their employees. We didn't get into the banking part of the business. And that business turned out really well. I was able to sell it. And when I was 65, I retired. And I now live in Delray Beach. So I've been retired for 12 years.
Wow.
But in retirement, I'm going to finish the story. I took on a passion for pickleball. And I'm sure you know what pickleball is. They say it's the fastest growing sport in the United States, at least. At any rate, I told you I had been a tennis coach. I became a pickleball coach in retirement. And kind of as a side hustle, I do a lot of teaching of pickleball, clinics and private lessons. I have a meetup group of over 1,600 people. So sometimes I'm busier than I want to be. And I happen to write 6 books on pickleball.
Wow, that's so amazing. Well,
So,
in reality, we never retire. We just shift. Maybe we change our status. Maybe we are no longer working for a paycheck. And in your case, you were an entrepreneur, so you were not necessarily working for a paycheck either. But retirement is a concept that I still don't understand. Like, I have enough money not to work, but I couldn't be not working. It would just drive me crazy. It would be the fastest way for me to die.
I agree. You'd end up playing mahjong or canasta the whole rest of your life, and that's no way that I want to live.
Okay, but in regards to pickleball, I mean, you are over 65 now. How bad is it for your joints?
Well, I've run 3 marathons. I ran them all after the age of 60. So I'm in pretty good shape. I play pickleball 4 or 5 times a week. I still play tennis, do a lot of walking, go to the gym. So, I'm hoping to, be healthy as long as I can.
Good for you. Okay, well, then, can you tell us about this book? What created the desire to write this book, or why a book on habits?
On habits. Okay, so here it is, Breakable Habits. So you asked me about how I keep active and everything. I did have a health scare a number of years ago. I had a AFib, atrial fibrillation, which is very common for older men, especially in the United States. I had to have 2 ablation surgeries, and now I am AFib free. And then I took a CT scan and had a very high calcium score around my heart. And along with that, I had very high cholesterol and elevated LDLs. And my doctor, I was already on statins. My doctor said I had to reduce my LDLs. So he prescribed, I'm going to be quick about this, okay? He prescribed something for me. I went and got the prescription. I didn't want to take it. I said, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to change my eating habits. Well, if you read the literature, you see that cholesterol is really not, they don't think it's caused by diet. You can only reduce your cholesterol maybe 8 to 10% by changing diet. Well, I changed my diet, went back to my cardiologist 3 months later to get my lipid profile done, and I reduced my LDLs 51%. Okay. So that's when I got it into my head. If I could make that change, okay, anybody with bad habits could create good behaviors. And that's when I started researching habit formation, the habit loop, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what gave me the impetus to write the book on habits. Breakable habits. All habits are breakable.
Wow, that's a great story. But I mean, I live in Canada and we are close related here. But would you say that the medicine in the United States is mostly it's not a preventive medicine? They I mean, it's said that they just want to sell you more drugs. So anything that you can do to prevent the sickness is not done. I mean, you are sold all kind of junk food all the time. There's the temptation everywhere. All the social circles are about eating junk food and drinking beer and alcohol and all this and that. And what is a poor human being to do except maybe eat everything that is put in your face?
Yes, obviously it's very difficult. The commercial food companies control the airwaves, and you're right. I don't want to say anything else about it, but yeah, I agree 100% with you. So it's very difficult to change those habits and to get into good eating habits. I agree.
And just one more on this. Now they have this new drug, Ozempic. I forgot, and it's just revolutionizing. I mean, I follow the stock market, and that's why I know about it. And I know it's just revolutionizing the whole drug industry and the whole junk food industry as well. Everything is changing just because of this new drug.
Yeah, well, evidently it does help people reduce, get thinner, okay? And it is changing a lot of things. And now there's a whole class of drugs like Ozempic, as you probably know, you follow the stock market. I don't think they know what the long-term effects are. They don't really know how it works. So, you lose muscle mass when you take Ozempic. So I think the jury is still out on those drugs.
But that losing muscle mass, I mean, if let's say I'm 400 pounds, right? And I decide to go on a diet and a drastic diet, and I lose all this fat, but I will also lose muscle mass. Isn't that normal?
Yeah, so you have to exercise. You normally lose a certain percentage of muscle mass every year you're alive. So if you don't exercise and build muscle while you're taking this, then you're going to lose muscle mass. But if you do, get into the gym, do some push-ups, things like that, to prevent your muscles from deteriorating, I think that's the only thing you can do. But
Okay,
yeah,
well, okay, well, now I know you wrote a book about habits and you are geared toward our diets, but being that this is a financial podcast, I wonder if how can we apply some of these habits to our financial life?
okay, so that's a good question, obviously. And as someone who is retired and who is financially secure, I went through, the whole process of saving for retirement. So the way I look at retirement in habits, and you probably know as much about this as I do, Elaine, the first, I boil it down to 5 habits, okay? And I can go through them quickly or slowly. You can control, what you want me to say. But, the first habit is to pay yourself first, okay? So a habit has, psychologically, a habit has 3 stages. It has what's called a cue, C-U-E, or a trigger, which uh, which produces an activity or a routine, which produces a reward. So it's cue, routine, reward. So your first cue for paying yourself is you get your first paycheck. Okay, that's the cue. What am I going to do with it? You get into a routine where you put money away into a retirement savings account, whether it's a 401k or an IRA or even a piggy bank or Robinhood, whatever. Pay yourself first. The reward, obviously, is that you start to see money being put aside. The second habit is to track your expenses. Okay.
Let me just,
Yeah. Go
I'm
ahead.
going to be interrupting you because, of
I
course,
want you to know me.
it makes sense. And all these things, I mean, in one way or another, we have been hearing about this before. So pay yourself first. And what I think that means is when you get your paycheck, right away, automatically, maybe you will have some portion of that money going into your savings account or whatever. But, I have to impress my girlfriend. I had to buy fancy something to impress her, and I had to impress my friends and have the beer with them and eat pizza and all this stuff. And of course, I need my cable TV, and I need all this stuff. So I never get to pay myself first because I have so many expenses. What can I do?
You're in trouble. As I go through in my book, it's not easy to develop good habits. I would never say that it was easy, okay? But if you know that, look, you have to think of what life is like when you're 65, or now you have ageism where people are going to be a lot older when they retire. Their retirement, our retirement maybe is 20, 25 years. The generation of millennials today, their retirement period is going to be 30 to 40 years. Okay. So you have to think about your 65-year-old self. You don't want to think about that self, go have your beer and your nachos, etc. But I mean, that's the point, to build these habits. I mean, parents don't teach their kids about money. They teach them about everything but money.
We're learning about gender identity, though.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Okay,
So,
never mind that I
yeah,
derailed this very bad. Okay, never mind. Let's continue talking about
yeah.
money.
So, I mean, you have to develop that habit of paying yourself. But again, the reward is that you see money be putting aside. That's got to be worth something. Okay. So that's habit number one.
Okay, yes. I arrived here in Canada as an immigrant, and I was working for minimum wage. I mean, the dirt lowest of the. And ever since my first day here, I started paying myself first. So I was able to do that, and I think everyone, no matter where they are in the United States or Canada, if they really want to, they can pay themselves first. And I tell you, I didn't speak English well. I still don't. I didn't speak any French at all. I had to start working as a janitor, and somehow I managed to put a little bit aside to pay myself first. So this is something that many people say, "Oh, I don't have rich parents. I don't have high education. I am underprivileged. I am Latino. I am black. I'm gay. Whatever." But I don't think there is any excuse if you really want to, and if you care about your older self, then you can put anything away, and then as time goes on, you can maybe increase that quantity. But I agree with you. If you get into the habit of starting even with $25 a month for your savings account, then that's just a great start.
Yeah, even like 5%, whatever you can put away, just getting into the habit
Right.
of putting away money for yourself, for your retirement. That's the habit that you're trying to achieve.
Okay,
Well,
well, I derail you a lot. So let's go into your second point.
the second habit is to track your expenses. Okay. So, how do you do that? Or what is the cue? What is the trigger? The trigger is you go out and buy something. Okay. So, you buy something and you go home and you either put it in a spreadsheet or you get a person. You got a spreadsheet there? No, a cup of coffee. Okay.
Mm.
Maybe QuickBooks, or there's so many of these apps nowadays, and you start tracking your expenses. That's the routine, the cue, then the routine. And you can see if you're spending money wisely or foolishly.
Mm.
And the reward would be that you would know what you're spending your money on, and you could adjust your lifestyle based on that. So the second, get
And how necessary is this? So let's say my paycheck is, I don't know, let's say at $2,000, right? And I pay myself first and I put $200 in my safe account. What does it matter how I track, how do I spend the rest if I already pay myself first? And that's my main concern. Pay myself first, and then the rest it could be in anything. Wouldn't that work?
no. So that's a good question. So, one thing we're talking about is retirement savings.
Right.
But another thing is having money put away for a rainy day, so to speak,
Okay.
right? I think the rule of thumb is, you need to have cash put aside, let's say, for 3 to 6 months of living expenses. That could be in a money market account, a low interest account, where nowadays you can get up to 5.5%, whatever. But you need to have money available for emergencies. Also, your car breaks down, whatever. So it's not just retirement savings, it's savings, for everyday living. So look, we're intelligent people. Okay. I mean, there are people who are not going to save, let's face it, right?
Right.
Okay. And they're going to end up the way they end up. But, fortunately, I wrote my book. So people can get into good habits about saving money. But tracking expenses is a habit that's very, very important, so you know where you're spending your money. So let
Okay.
me go
And
to let me go into the third habit,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
really related, and that's living below your means.
Mm.
Okay. So what is the cue or the trigger? The trigger could be that you get a bonus, okay, or you get a raise. What are you going to do with that money? Well, the routine normally would be, okay, I want to go buy a new car or take a nicer vacation, etc., improve your life. But what you really want to do is increase the amount of money you're putting towards retirement. That would be the routine of getting a bonus or a raise. So if you get a raise, instead of putting that extra money to luxury goods, you put it to yourself, maybe add a percentage to the amount of money you're putting away for retirement. So living below your means, you hear that all the time, but it really is doable. You just have to maintain your standard of living and not always think that you have to improve it because you're making more money.
Right. I just have to say that I agree with you. I just think that we live in a society where that is so difficult. I mean, we are bombarded with advertisement all day long. And what's worse? At one time, I used to do taxes, right, for people.
Right.
And I used to see these people who looked like they were dead broke. And when I did their taxes, they had so much money I couldn't believe my eyes. And then there were other people who used to come with their BMWs and well dressed and the latest gadget. And when I used to see what was going on behind the scenes, they were living out of debt. But from the outside, you don't know, and you want to be as wealthy as everybody else. And then we have, buy the latest iPhone, buy the latest, uh, luxury water, uh, go to Disneyland because that's what you do if you really love your sons or your grandsons. So society puts so much pressure on us that living within your means it makes so much sense, but I think the psychological barrier or the social pressure is just so intense that I think that's the failing point of so many families.
I agree with you. You know, it's not easy. Um, we live in a society where we have Mercedes Benz and we have Chevrolets. You know, you have to choose and make the decisions. See, what happens is that we don't think about, unless somebody tells us, we don't think about what life is going to be like once we retire. Where's that money going to come from to live? So it's not easy to develop good habits. I agree with you.
And now, since you mentioned retirement, people, well, we have been talking about retirement all along, but people have the misconception that the government social security check is going to be enough, and it's just not enough. You know, inflation is going up. A lot of people are really struggling, and housing is going up as well. People can no longer pay the rent. So yeah, it's a sad reality when you don't have any money put aside for those later years. It's a cruel war out there.
Yeah. So that leads me to number four, the good lead in, which is to educate yourself.
Mm.
Okay. Maybe you have some free time. That could be the trigger or the cue. You start watching your podcasts. Okay. There are lots of financial podcasts. Dave Ramsey. I listened to My First Million podcast, which is one of my favorites, or Tim Ferriss. Read a book. Tony Robbins has written a couple of books. Educate yourself. Okay. And then you'll understand a little more about compound interest. Okay, how if you had started early, when you start early, how that money compounds. You know, the stock market. You could give people some advice on diversification, whatever. So the reward for that, of course, is you feel that you have more control over your life because you have a better idea of where your money's going and how it's compounding over time. So I think that's another habit, is to educate yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue playing devil's advocate because that's what I'm enjoying doing today.
Thank
Every
you.
time I open my Twitter or my Facebook or whatever, there is someone who seems knowledgeable, uh, and they say, I'm going to help you become rich. All you have to do is either give me your money and I give you a 20% interest every year, or you just have to buy my plan. I don't know. There's this guy Cardone who comes and tell us how we can earn 20 or 30% on our investments, and 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 I know some quote unquote financial advisors that I don't know if what they're doing is completely legal, but they
Well, excuse me.
but
Sorry.
they come off as such knowledgeable. They show
Right.
you all these pie charts and graph, and of course, oh, I have a friend who was invited to a dinner, and because he was invited to this fancy restaurant with a great steak and wine and whatever, he gave almost all his portfolio to this financial advisor that is charging him huge fees. So this is a place. I mean, it's easy to inform, educate ourselves as long as we know how to educate ourselves. But there is so much misinformation around that sometimes that's also difficult.
Yeah, I have no answer to that, Elaine. You know, there's charlatans in every business and in every walk of life. You know, that's why educating yourself, you know, finding somebody that you trust, that you believe in. It's funny, a nephew of mine just went to work for Cardone. You brought his name up. And
It's gonna
yeah,
become rich soon.
yeah, they're very persuasive, these people. And you just have to educate yourself and try to use common sense and good judgment and not be taken in.
Yeah, well, all this to highlight that there are a lot of roadblocks along the way to
Yeah.
become to have a better financial life, and yeah. So, what's your last point?
The last point is to evaluate your retirement savings plan and to adjust it when need be. So the cue or trigger for that would be every month, every quarter, the first of the month, the first of the quarter, you sit down, you look at your spreadsheet, look at how much money you have put away for retirement, pull out one of those 401 calculators, uh, come up with your lifespan, how much money you've put away, come up with maybe a 7-8% interest rate that it's going to accumulate, and figure out if you're on the right path. So if you can do this every quarter, then you can track what you're doing and you can determine whether or not you're on the right path or if you need to adjust it. So I think that's another good habit that you should get into. So all these habits, Elaine, they're not easy. I never
Right.
said they were easy.
Well, I think you mentioned in this book, and I just like to point it out, is also the environment where you are in. If you are around, let's say, a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, maybe you feel inspired to become an entrepreneur. If you are around a whole bunch of people who drink, I don't know, junk food every evening while smoking pot. Now pot is legal here, so I see it in the park, the Dorito bags and the marijuana and the beer. If that's your circle of friends, then that's what you are going to end up doing. But if you surround yourself with people who are disciplined about their spending and they are thinking about their future, I think that's also a great help, and it reinforces the path where you want to go.
That's so true. I remember my mother used to say, you're judged by the company you keep. I'm not sure that's the right way to put it, but, the people you surround yourself with, uh, their habits and traits contribute to the way you view life. So I think you're right. It's important to surround yourself with people who are uplifting and people who have good values. They say also where you live, it's important that, like a 5-block radius or something like that. We know that financial, that wealth, is based on a lot of different things, one of them being, where you live, and the other, obviously, who you keep company with. There's no question about that. I agree.
And talking about where you live, I think even if you live in an environment that is not helpful, you can help yourself by feeding yourself good information, like reading your book, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos that are motivational and educational. So, what we put in between our ears is so helpful as well.
Yeah, well, I think you're doing an amazing job. I've watched your podcasts, and I think you bring a lot of this information to light. I don't know what kind of audience you have. I hope it builds and builds, because I think you're giving good information out there. I've listened to some of your podcasts. You're not feeding fake information. It's real. It's tangible, and you're giving people ideas of what they can do to improve their lives.
Well,
So
now you're making me blush, Bob. But let me. The last question I like to ask you is, first of all, well, I'd like you to show us your book one more time and tell us where people can find you and where can they buy their book.
okay, it's called Breakable Habits. It's on Amazon. Um, you can just type in Breakable Habits or Breaking Bad Habits, any kind of word like that. It's new, so it might take you a little time to find it. Amazon can be a cruel world for ebooks, but it's there. It's there on Amazon if you look for it.
Okay, and one personal question for me. So I'm approaching my 60s. Could I join and start doing pickleball as well without killing
Yeah,
myself?
definitely, I don't know how many pickleball courts you have in Montreal, but I told you before, I live in southern Florida, and right now the weather is in the 90s, but people are still playing pickleball. And
It's not
I
too
live
harsh
in,
on the joints.
no, forget that. I live in an over 55 community. Okay.
Okay.
And if I told you we have 40, 50 people every morning out there at 8:30, 9 a.m., all over 55 years old, playing pickleball. Some can only play 1 or 2 games. Okay. I have a brother who's over 80 years old who goes out a couple of times a week and plays one. Nobody wants to play with him because he's a little slow, but he's at least out there playing.
Okay,
Okay.
Bob. I promise you I will give it a try. And thank you so much for your time today.
Okay. Thanks very much, Elaine. I appreciate it. Take care.